we need to talk about Marathon. We need to talk about what the hell is going on with this game. It's been delayed from September 23rd this year into an indefinite date in 2026, or at least 2026. Like, who knows how long it's going to take for them to do the thing I'm about to describe here. Because I feel like Marathon has had a disastrous response, like the way that I've seen it roll out, all the different closed alpha playtests, the general conversation around it being an extraction shooter. Obviously, you play quite a bit of Hunt Showdown, and it seems like, later this year, there's Arc Raiders coming out, which has all the energy around it, which I feel like Marathon doesn't have. Either way, it was also reported by Forbes that the developers, Bungie, were only told about this at the same time as the public when the official statement went out on Bungie's website. But Bungie do say that they need more time to craft Marathon into the game that truly reflects your passion. And the overall messaging on the statement is very just like, we messed up, like, we're going to listen to you, like give us time. Across the next few months, they've said there'll be more closed tests happening. And they keep reiterating that the most important element is the players, because I guess if you look into the wider realm of extraction shooters, they do have diehard communities and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, they say there'll be more closed tests coming up across the next few months, and lots of changes aimed to increase intensity overall through AI and different survival aspects. They want to connect with players across the rest of 2025 and beyond, and just hopefully that'll give them something to at least exist in the space. It doesn't make me feel any better.
Does it not?
No.
See, I like that they've actually just come out and said, look, it's delayed and it's delayed indefinitely.
Yeah.
Because I don't think in its current form, based on the hands-on reports from the alpha and from what we've seen so far in the gameplay trailers and the big deep dives that Bungie has released, it didn't look like something from a studio like Bungie, if that made sense.
Yeah.
It kind of looked like a dime a dozen extraction shooter that's on the market right now, and it was missing that certain something for me personally to kind of turn my head in a market, like you said, that has quite fierce competition right now. And that September date, well, it was only a few months off anyway.
There's no way they were going to hit that.
There was no way,
especially
I
after
think,
the lawsuits, or the potential infringing lawsuits.
I was about to say, especially after they were going in to check the plagiarism stuff with the art. I imagine that's going to take a long time because they're going to be extremely scrutinous. Like, they've got to check everything, even if they were 100% sure before, because they can't have that happening again, of course. So the fact that they have held their hands up and said, yeah, we can't risk it, I think that's a step in the right direction. There's still a lot of old Bungie in this announcement. The fact that the staff themselves didn't know until we all knew. That is, I don't know, we've had so many reports of mismanagement within that studio at this point that, to me, is not much of a surprise.
No.
But I don't think they could have had another Destiny situation. And by that, I mean release something that feels a little bit bare bones, that has some promise but isn't quite where it needs to be, and rely on the audience devotion almost to the studio to get it over the line. I think there was too much negativity around Marathon for that to happen, and it needs to come out way more confident and way more feature complete, in my opinion. And hopefully this delay will result in that further on down the line.
My thing with Bungie is that it's kind of fascinating thinking all the way back to, at least in my case, with one of the first big, oh my god, what the hell's going on, things with Bungie was Halo 2. And that whole game's development, it was crunched to hell. They put out the version that they could. That's why there was the whole finish the fight thing. Like, I'm going back to like 2004. God, I'm old. But still, there was that whole thing about the way it was managed, the way it was brought together. And loads of people have left Bungie over the years, whether it's Joseph Staten or Marty O'Donnell or whatever, like legendary people in terms of their contributions to certain works like the Halo trilogy. But the general thing that keeps coming back around is that Bungie's management and the top brass are ridiculous. Like, it just seems like they cannot run projects very well, whether that is the height of the Halo trilogy, or what happened after Halo 2. Or like things that happened with Destiny, where there were entire builds of the game that couldn't be updated for days and things like that. And it's weird because I always think that they get away with it because of gameplay is king. And because even though the original Destiny was absolutely on fire, and I feel like Destiny, when it's thought of now, people think about Destiny 2 or they think about 2017 onwards, they don't necessarily remember just how bad those initial years were, and how threadbare that initial launch was. And so, like I said, they've fallen back on gameplay as king so many times. I loved Halo 2. I wasn't bothered about the cliffhanger because I had such a blast playing Halo 2 at the time.
Right.
Even though I get the complaints about it. And so, for me, this is the first time that Bungie, especially in the first-person shooter space, haven't been able to have the gameplay as king thing. Where people have said, coming out of Marathon, like, yeah, it plays well. It plays like what you'd expect from a Destiny-adjacent version of Bungie. But it's not as wide-reaching. It's just not getting people in. Like, whether that's a genre thing or the art style or whatever the hell it is, I do not care about an extraction shooter.
Yeah.
It didn't get me in. I wasn't chasing the closed alpha. It would get me in if it was PvP or if there was more of a story element. Like the lore stuff sounds really cool, and I know that they have the Mac originals to like pull from. But yeah, I think the lifeline they've always fallen back on, and that those the managers, the top brass, whatever. It's like, well, we're Bungie, it'll work out. It'll still play well, and it plays well enough, but it doesn't feel like Halo level or Destiny. Like the thing with Destiny was like, but it plays so good.
Yeah.
And people put up with so much crap for like a decade with that game, and I don't know what you have to do to this to make it that enticing.
I don't know if you can at this point. I truly think that for as respected as Bungie was, their reputation has been kind of tarnished to the point where they feel like Bethesda releasing Starfield, where Bethesda ran on a similar goodwill for the longest time. They had so many bugs, they had so many situations where they released a game or a DLC where it was a little bit subpar, but they got through it because they were providing something that at the time like no other studio was, and they were Bethesda, they were the kings of the RPG.
Totally.
And then suddenly you had the likes of CD Projekt Red popping up with The Witcher 3 and so many other developers that were kind of stealing their lunch, as it were. And I think Bungie has had a similar situation where at a certain point they could brush all the criticism off and say, yeah, but at the end of the day, we're Bungie, we're giving you a gameplay experience that like no one else is providing you. I think they've had the Bethesda-ification of their entire reputation now, where they've kind of pushed it a little bit too far and people are less willing to forgive. It's not that they can't release a great game in Marathon and people will say, oh, you've done a good job there, but they can't rely on that goodwill in the same way, like I mentioned, I don't think, because even Destiny, like you said, Destiny has had such a strange life over the past 10 years or
And
so.
I've played a ton of it as well.
Right, yeah. Like you said, you know, it came out, it had that initial reaction of, what the hell is this? There's something here, but clearly something is being mismanaged. It's not what it was supposed to be. The Taken King and future DLCs kind of clawed back that fan base. Then you got Destiny 2, which was like, hey, this is an improvement. But even then, the past few years of Destiny, as far as I can tell, is not a diehard Destiny 2 player, has been dogged more by the kind of controversy that we've seen around Marathon, that we saw around Destiny 1 in its worst years, and that seems to be on the decline now. We have seen Bungie go through a bunch of different partners. They were independent, then they were with Activision, then they were independent again, now they're with PlayStation, and it seems like no matter who is in charge, where the money is coming from, these issues have persisted, right? And I really do think now with Marathon, they are at that Starfield / Fallout 76 point in their history where players have just gone, no, this needs to be good. Like, yeah, this needs to be good. I'm not going to chase you down anymore like you described then. Like, you've got to come to me and prove why you deserve my attention again, which I think can ultimately be quite healthy. I think that, you know, when it's not putting a studio in jeopardy, which I hope it's not with Bungie, can create that drive again where they're not just taking things for granted.
I honestly think they need, because my whole thing is like the backbone of this thing, like, why not cancel it? If you're Sony and you've cancelled The Last of Us Factions mode, which to me made so much more sense when the HBO show is about to kick off, you know, and you've cancelled Concord after a couple of weeks, like Helldivers is still ticking over because I would say they never cared about that in the first place. It was just in development off in the corner somewhere, and then it blew up and they were like, oh god, okay, let's just let this keep going. In this case, I feel like Sony need this thing because they've been chasing this live service stuff for so long. So many things have gone wrong, but they need that backbone of revenue. Like overall, we've talked about it a bunch of times before, but obviously they're known for the first party premium stuff. I would have to imagine that they acquired Bungie to make the next Halo, to make the next Destiny for them. And then you have all the recurrent spending methods, you have all the skin packs and all that crap. But that becomes their big money spender. And if they cancel this, is that just like an outright waste of money? Like, because in theory, excuse me, you can still get this right in terms of the way that it plays and everything. But I just don't know if, like, for me, like, the art style is really controversial. Like, it's like, in terms of, obviously, there's the lawsuit, the potential lawsuit. I keep calling it a lawsuit because it might lead to that. But there's obviously the plagiarism elements. They all came out. It was very much proven that assets had gotten in from an external artist and had made their way into the game. Even certain signatures that artist had left in were then on game textures. It was very obvious that it was cribbed and dropped into the game. So I wonder how much you have to gut that thing. And like, yeah, I don't know how you make it like thoroughly appealing.
Yes.
And especially when on the Xbox Microsoft side, they're about to put Halo on PlayStation as well. Which is like horrendous timing, or really weirdly, darkly poetic irony if you're Bungie at this point.
I know, it's a very strange time overall. I think it's an interesting point there about why don't they cancel it. I think the one thing that is convincing me is just money. I think the difference between the likes of of the Last of Us factions or Concord or whatever, maybe Fair Games, see how that fares in the future. Is
that's
that
so coming.
You know, those studios, like even Naughty Dog, you know, they haven't got a proven track record in the realm of live service. They don't have the figures to fall back on and say, like, look, yeah, things might seem a bit dodgy now, but look at our track record, look at the amount of money we've made. And I think that's probably why Bungie hasn't outright just like pivoted or whatever with Marathon, and the fact that they're sticking with it, because I think they'll look at their balance sheet and say, look, we've pulled this off in the past. We can make this amount of money. We can make a lot of cash.
My thing is, and we've said this loads, that PlayStation, it would be awesome if they had a dedicated first-person shooter. Like, for the longest time, it was Killzone. I played all 3 Killzones. They never blew me away. Like, for me, they were always up against Halo, and they always failed. Even though I get Killzone has like a certain feel to the weapons, the weight of them, and everything. But still, if they had a first-person shooter, you put it on PlayStation Plus, you get it in front of people, and they immediately feel it. Like, I always remember the way that Rocket League took off in 2015. Because that was on PS Plus, and it went overnight. It went from nothing to what it is now, and it's like people will try things if they're in front of them, as is always the case on Game Pass on Xbox.
See, you say this, and I think you're right mostly, but the reason I'd be hesitant to do that is Sony released the beta or alpha or whatever it is for Concord, and then like nobody played it.
That thing looked like hell, though.
I know, but what I mean is like people will obviously be more willing to give it a try if it is on PlayStation Plus or whatever. But I don't think it is a guarantee necessarily, just because, and I know you're going to say these looked way worse, but the likes of, what's it called, Scott? What's that Square Enix one? Foam Stars.
Foam Stars?
That was a PlayStation
That's a
Plus
pistol
thing.
I've got there. That's Foam Stars. They're not in Foam Stars.
That was a PlayStation Plus thing, and it didn't it didn't find that audience.
No.
You know, I think it's one thing serving something up to people in the modern age, but you've got to then convince them to want to play it in between the amount of other stuff that's being served up at a certain point.
True.
And I don't know, I hope Marathon has that element to it, but the fact that currently, in its current form, it's not going to be that accessible anyway. It's going to be like Concord, and you're going to have to pay that price point just to get into the experience, which God. I do think in your defense will definitely hamper it overall, because when you put a price point on something like this that a lot of people expect to be free to play, that's an even bigger barrier than trying to convince them to play something that's just there and accessible.
Totally, man. I think I have so many thoughts there where I'm like, Foam Stars and Concord felt repellent, where I'm like, I'll give them a chance. Kind of like Marathon is something that I think both of us would leap on if it was right in front of us, just to give it a shot.
I mean, I did that with Foam Stars and Concord, and I was just like, I think you know immediately in the in the modern age, the multiplayer like space is so different than it was even like 10 years ago, I think. And I don't know, I feel, and I know you might be coming at this from a different perspective, because I know you're a little bit more casual when it comes to multiplayer stuff. But when I'm looking for a new multiplayer thing, I'm looking for something to live on. So even though I didn't actually mind the gameplay loop of Foam Stars or Concord, like, they were fine.
Splatoon, who's that? Where's that?
Neither of them did enough to convince me that I wanted to play it long term. And I think that's the issue that Marathon's going to have with me personally, of what have you got planned in the pipeline and available right now that'll make me want to play this for more than a weekend, you know? So I would probably give it a go, like you said, but whether I'd stick with it, I think is maybe the more, to me, important question overall.